What's up everybody? So today I want to talk about something that I've seen asked quite a lot and I've actually seen a lot of outrage about. What? It's only 210 feet tall? That's it, I'm out of here. I quit being an enthusiast. And that's what some people say. I've seen so many people complaining about the new ride and that it's not a Giga coaster, and people keep saying that it's a pointless addition adding a second hypercoaster to the park's lineup. So that's what I want to talk about today, is why wasn't Candymonium made to be a Giga coaster, and why did Hersheypark decide to make it a hypercoaster? Well, maybe to start off, I should say Hersheypark probably didn't decide to make this a hypercoaster. It's more of they didn't have a choice. So in case if you didn't know, the town of Hershey, it's also called the Township of Derry. And this township has a whole council of people that make laws and regulations for the entire area. Just like how any small city or large town has laws and zoning regulations that everybody must abide to, the town of Hershey or the town of Derry, it's no different. So I'm going to pull up some screenshots here, which is actually, I've never pulled up screenshots ever in a video, but there's a lot of references here that I want to make. And in the description down below, I'll put a bunch of links to all my references to all this information that I'm about to tell you guys. So the main article I'm going to be pulling up is from the zoning ordinance for the Township of Derry that was imposed in 2019. So let's take a look at the ordinance real quick. Let's skip to Article 4, which is for Performance Standards and Supplementary Regulations, going down to Section 225/425. This is specifically for amusement park ride height exception. They made an entire section in this ordinance specifically just for the height of rides, in Hersheypark specifically, because this is just the ordinance for the town of Derry. Amusement rides located in an amusement park, theme, or water park may be erected to a maximum height of 350 feet. So many people see that and they immediately jump to conclusions that there you go, there's no reason why Hersheypark cannot build a Giga coaster. And they don't read any further, but there's a lot more to it than that. Let's read a little bit further. Provided any ride exceeding 200 feet in height meet the following criteria. So it's like an infomercial, like, but wait, there's more! So let's take a look at what the requirements and criteria is for any structure or ride that is exceeding 200 feet. So I'm gonna read them all off to you guys first, and then I'll analyze each one and see if Hersheypark meets these criteria or not. Number 1 states, the amusement ride shall be located a minimum of half the ride height from property lines adjacent to public streets. Number 2, the applicant shall demonstrate to the township zoning officer's satisfaction that the ride will comply to ASTM F770-15, as may be amended, standard practice for ownership, operation, maintenance, and inspection of amusement rides and devices. Number 3, the applicant shall demonstrate to the township zoning officer's satisfaction that the ride will accommodate the retrieval of patrons from the ride in a safe and expedient manner during emergency conditions. Number 4, the applicant shall demonstrate to the township zoning officer's satisfaction that the amusement ride of such a height is an industry normality and is necessary to remain competitive with similar amusement theme in water parks. Okay, so there's a bunch of legal jargon in there, so let's kind of clarify what each of these statements mean. The first statement's a little bit unclear to me, only because it states that the amusement ride must be located a minimum of half the ride's height away from the park's borders or from adjacent public streets. So does that mean that any part of the ride cannot be at least half the ride's maximum height away from the park borders? I can't see that being the case, because if you look at some other rides at Hersheypark like Sky Rush, their tracks are hugging the border of the park, and there's absolutely no way that those tracks are half of the ride's height away from the park borders. So what I imagine the case is that the specific point where the top of the lift hill is, which is being the highest point of the ride, that specific point must be at least half the ride's height away from the park borders. That makes a lot more sense if you look at some of the park borders and looking at some of these screenshots I took off of Google Maps. Sky Rush here, and this is the one that I think is really close to pushing the border here, because that lift hill is pretty dang close to the park border. Obviously it must have met the requirements for them to build the ride. And looking at the plot of land that Candymonium is on, there is a lot of space around the ride. So if they did allow Candymonium to be a Giga coaster, being 300 feet or more tall, I think they could easily fit some kind of layout that would keep the lift hill half the ride's height away from any park borders. Just comparing to how close some other lift hills are in the park to the borders, I can't really see this being the reason why Candymonium could not have been made a Giga coaster. So I say that this first statement would be a checkmark for Hersheypark, and I would think that they would meet the requirements for this specific rule if they wanted to make Candymonium a Giga coaster. Okay, so looking at statement number 2 now. First of all, what the heck is an ASTM F770-15? What the heck is that? So doing some research, this is what I found out. So ASTM is the American Society of Testing and Materials. They're an organization that determines standards for a bunch of systems, services, materials, and products. In this case, they have guidelines for that Hersheypark must follow in order to have a ride exceeding 200 feet. This section 770-15, in layman's terms, it pretty much says that Hersheypark must operate, perform all maintenance and inspections themselves, that they are responsible for performing all activities of that matter. I'm looking at this screenshot here. There's actually a PDF that states all the details about that, but apparently you had to buy that PDF. It was like $50, and I'm broke, so I'm not going to spend $50 to look at a PDF. I'm just going to go under the presumption that Hersheypark follows all these guidelines for all the rest of the coasters, because I can't imagine that these guidelines would be specific for only hyper coasters and Giga coasters. Any coaster at all, I imagine, would have to follow these guidelines for safety. So I'm going to go ahead and say that Hersheypark checks out for number 2. Looking at statement number 3 now. This statement pretty much says that Hersheypark has to prove to the zoning officer of the area that they have a safety plan for evacuations on the ride. Well, I mean, duh. Of course Hersheypark's going to have a very strategic plan as to how to perform an evacuation if they had to, either it be on the lift hill or on the break course. I think any park in their right mind is going to have a very strategic and safe procedure how to evacuate guests from a ride if they had to do such a thing. So I'm pretty sure this checks off for Hersheypark too. So let's see, the first statement, second statement, and third statement in this article. I think it's safe to say that Hersheypark checks off for all 3 of them, but let's look at the 4th one now. So this statement pretty much says that Hersheypark has to prove to the zoning officers that a ride exceeding 200 feet must be considered an industry normality, and a ride exceeding such a height must be necessary for competing against other theme parks. Pretty much boils down to Hersheypark convincing the zoning officer and the Township of Derry that if they wanted to build a Giga coaster, that it is an industry normality and that they have to build this Giga coaster in order to compete with their competitor parks. No. I can't say that a Giga coaster is an industry normality. When you put into perspective how many hyper coasters are out there, if you take a look at RCDB, which is Roller Coaster Database if you don't know, I counted well over 50 hyper coasters that are still operating today. As for Giga coasters, there's only 7 in the world operating right now. There's going to be 8 when Orion and Kings Island opens up, but still. Seeing that ratio, 8 Giga coasters compared to over 50 operating hyper coasters, it would be hard to make a strong argument that a Giga coaster is an industry normality. So showing these kind of numbers to a town council who is, for the most part, probably not even coaster enthusiasts, they're just a bunch of lawmakers and regular citizens, and they couldn't care less about coasters, honestly. Seeing these kind of stats, they definitely would not consider a Giga coaster as an industry normality, and they definitely would not feel that it's necessary to build a Giga coaster to compete with other neighboring parks. But the town council, seeing how Skyrush was just kind of a flop, honestly, I imagine they'd be very weary to let Hersheypark try to build something even taller just for the same thing to possibly happen again. So putting that into mind, I say that we're rather lucky that they even approved a second hypercoaster. Then again, I'm pretty sure Hersheypark made the argument that this is a completely different hypercoaster and that it is a totally different experience than Skyrush, and they can almost guarantee that this is going to be very well received by the general public and by coaster enthusiasts too. So while we're talking about Candymonium, let's talk about some other complaints that I've seen on some of Hersheypark's posts. Another common one is people saying, why does Hersheypark even need a second hyper to begin with? They've already got Skyrush. Why build a second hypercoaster? It's completely redundant and adds nothing to the park's lineup. I think this is totally wrong. I think this is a wonderful addition for Hersheypark, and I don't think they could have chosen anything better to add to the lineup. As I said just a few minutes ago, this is a completely different experience than Skyrush. Skyrush is all about intensity and airtime and max G-forces, which is why it's not very well received by the general public. Candymonium is a B&M hyper. It's all about flow to airtime. It's a much more graceful and easier ride to experience. Whether you're from the general public or from a coaster enthusiast, everybody would pretty much agree that a B&M hyper is always a crowd pleaser and you can't go wrong with them, honestly. So yeah, Hersheypark may be having 2 hypercoasters. Why is that a problem, honestly? Look at some other parks. We got Busch Gardens Williamsburg. They got Apollo's Chariot and Griffin. 2 hypercoasters, also from the same manufacturer at that, and yet they're still 2 completely different experiences. No one's complaining about that. Let's look at Cedar Point. They got 3 hypercoasters. They got Valraven, they got Steel Vengeance, and they got Magnum XL, the original hypercoaster. They got 3 in one park. No one's complaining there. And one of the competitor parks, Kennywood, they got Steel Curtain and they got Phantom's Revenge. 2 hypercoasters right there. Both totally different experiences. No complaints there. Busch Gardens Tampa, they have Sheikah right now and they got Iron Gwazi opening up this year. They're going to have 2 hypers there. No complaints. And there's a bunch of other parks too that have more than one hypercoaster. So people saying that it's pointless and redundant to have two hypercoasters in the same park, it's simply not right. There's absolutely no reason why a park can't have more than one hypercoaster. Especially given the fact that they're going to be two completely different experiences, I can guarantee once this ride opens up, any complaints of this matter are going to be gone. Alright, so one other complaint that I want to talk about that I've seen a few times on Hersheypark's posts, and honestly, it kind of blows my mind that this is even a thing, but I've seen it said a few times. Some people state that the restraints on Candymonium are not safe for a ride being that tall. What? Okay, first of all, the ride's not tall enough for you. Now the ride is too tall for the restraints that it has. Okay, all frustration aside, the manufacturer of Candymonium, B&M, Bolliger&Mabillard, they've been making hypercoasters for well over 20 to 25 years. And they've used the same restraining system the entire time, which is called a clamshell restraint. Every B&M hyper has these restraints. There has not been a single incident where somebody has flown off of a B&M hyper with these restraints. And a lot of the newer B&M models that use these restraints add seatbelts to these now, Candymonium being one of them. So on top of the restraints that are already safe themselves, and you're adding seatbelts, I can 100% guarantee to you, you are not going to fly off of this ride. Alright, so on a personal note, here's some advice that I want to give to anybody who may be complaining about Candymonium or complaining about any new coaster that their home park may be getting. Just stop. Look, just be happy that your home park is getting a new coaster to begin with. There are so many parks out there that the locals would be dying to get a new coaster of any kind. So why would you put up a huge fit about your home park adding a new coaster? They're spending millions upon millions of dollars to add this attraction to the experience for your home park. Just be happy and thankful that you're getting a new coaster. Especially for a park like Hersheypark, they already got an amazing lineup. I wouldn't be anything but happy and excited to see something new added to that lineup. So if your home park, or any park for the matter, is getting a new coaster, just be happy. Hopefully this video shed some light on the matter as to why Candymonium was not made a Giga coaster. As I said before, I put some links in the description down below just for some references that I got some of this information about, and an actual link to the zone ordinance itself. Like, this is the actual zone ordinance, so you can have a look for yourself, and I'll put the page number on the ordinance right next to the link of it, and then you can just have a look for yourself at these statements. Alright guys, I wrapped the video up here. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you guys in the next loop. See you guys.